right, so we're back with On the Lane Podcast. I'm Brian, and this is Pastor Jay. Today we're going to be talking about the God who made and sustains everything. And this is episode 5 in a series of episodes that we're doing geared towards the Westminster Confession of Faith. So just to recap, we started with why even have a confession. That's episode 1. You can go back and listen to that. Episode 2 was God Speaks, the Bible's role. Episode 3 was Who is God? And then episode 4 was Does God Have a Plan? And that episode gets a little spicy. We talk about hermit huts. We talk about working at Domino's.
That may be cut, though. You
Stuff
never
like
know.
that could have been cut. Hopefully it's not, Micah. Leave that stuff in for the people. They want to hear it. But today we're going to be talking about the God who made and sustains everything. So Jay, let's jump in. So what does the Bible say about God's relationship with the world?
So the Bible teaches, Genesis 1, that God made the world and that he didn't just make the world, that he also sustains the world. So in him we live and move and have our being. And then if you think about Colossians 1, that Christ is the sustainer of all things. And so God made the world and he sustains the world.
So, Jay, is there an Old Testament passage that highlights God's daily care for creation?
I mean, I think that Psalm 104 talks about the creation of the world. He lays the beams of his chambers on the waters. He makes the clouds of his chariot. He rides on the wings of the wind. You set the earth on its foundation so that it should never be moved. But then it also talks, like verse 10, you make springs gush forth in the valleys. They flow between the hills. Verse 11, they give drink to every beast of the field. The wild donkeys quench their thirst. So there are kind of two extremes to be avoided. One is where there is no God. God makes the world, but he has no interaction with the world. But then the other extreme is God is just like part of the world, right? That this rock or this bush or whatever is, that's God. And Christianity rightly rejects both extremes and says God is immanent. He is present to his world, or even more beautifully, the world is present to him. Yeah. So that we can say God gives drink to every beast of the field, but at the same time, he's transcendent. Yeah. So we don't say this little thing over there, that's the God we worship.
As the world becomes more technological, and we were just talking about AI last episode, how do you keep this idea forefront in your mind as the world continues to become, because we're not in fields. Yeah. We're not watching the rising sun, the setting sun. We're on our computers. Yep. We're ordering food from DoorDash. We're so disconnected from things. How do we keep this truth?
Well, it's funny because we were joking about, hermits and the woods and whatever.
I wasn't joking.
But I know, but one of the things that you could do is you actually, if you need to experience creation. You need to be out and about. Yeah. And it really, we were driving between my parents and my wife's dad and stepmom in Houston, and we were on this tollway between the two houses. And I actually said to my family, look around. There's not a single green thing. You can't see a single, there's not, I couldn't see somebody's apartment had like a little fern on a window. I could see nothing that was naturally green. Then if you think about, and I'm not knocking Houston, but just I think any kind of big city, then you think about the light pollution. And so you don't look up at the starry skies above. You don't even see them. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Because what you see are like the city lights kind of, and then when you're driving around, you don't see anything that's natural. Yeah. Except for people who are made in the image of God and should serve as a constant reminder to us of the Lord. Because we're made in his image. But then it's sad because if you're there in your mom's basement, on your computer, looking at a screen, then it really is dehumanizing. Yeah. So then it's easy to forget. But I would say go for a walk in the woods. Yeah. Obviously, read the Bible. Right. But I mean, if you're a pagan and you don't believe in anything, I think that you have to. I had a teacher in graduate school who always joked that there are certain philosophers who have to try to make the world safe from materialism.
Okay. Yeah.
And the idea being that atheists who say, "Oh, I don't care anything about God" or whatever, that actually they have to structure all of life to keep God out. Mm-hmm. And I'm inhabiting this technological world that humans made and that I control.
Yeah.
Right? If I want the screen to be a particular color, to change it up, I control. Yeah. And so I think I'm this little mini God and I'm not.
Yeah. So we're talking about current culture now. What about in the past? How have different figures in church history described God's relationship to the world?
It's a great question. So if you think about just the kind of long line of Christian reflection, one non-negotiable is that God made the world from nothing. Mm-hmm. And that was scandalous to the pagans because Aristotle taught that the universe always existed. And so then he defended the idea of a first mover or a first cause, but this divine being for Aristotle did not create the world, just kind of started things that already existed into motion. And Christians say no, that quote unquote, as embarrassing as it is from a pagan world to say, no, God made something out of nothing. They had to be faithful to the Bible. So you see this in the church fathers. And then Aquinas, actually, you see him use Aristotle's defense of God as a first cause or as a prime mover and defending God's existence. So interestingly enough, there's the kind of rejection of the idea of an eternal, always existing universe, but at the same time playing that pagan argument for Christian purposes. I think then with Calvin, as he's trying to resist the slander against him that he believes in a stoical fate, that he believes that there's just an impersonal force causing everything to happen. Then you get a really a sense of the fatherly aspect of providence, that God creates and sustains everything, not as a mere exercise of raw power, but as an expression and development of his love, as a flowing out of his love.
So are there problems, like this next question, the philosophical questions arise when people talk about creation?
Yep.
Are one of the problems like, well, if God's in control, is it kind of going back to something we talked about? If God created this and he's all loving and he's in control, why is that hurricane going through Jamaica killing people?
Correct.
Is that the philosophy? Is that one of them?
Yeah, definitely. So the problem of evil is one of them. Yeah. And I think even more basically, if God upholds, directs, disposes, and governs all creatures and all their actions, as the confession teaches, then how does God do all of those things while at the same time recognizing that God has given us the power to make choices, and we make bad choices and we're responsible for those choices. So I also think that the idea of creation and what does it mean to say that something had a beginning, and then David Hume actually doubted the idea of causation itself. So there are all sorts of questions there. But I don't know. The world I inhabit is so small. So you may have a greater sense of what kind of philosophical questions people have. But I mean, that's...
Yeah. I think it's more of the problem with evil. Also, too, I think other cultures and countries would have an easier time believing this than Americans, because Americans are very independent. Yeah. And for you to tell them that they're not in control, that infringes on their rights. Yeah. At that point. Yeah. And it's kind of like, whoa, like, And so I think it's more of that. If you tell me I'm not in control, that's not right.
Yeah, I think if you feel like you're driving the bus, you don't want anybody to tell you that actually that there's somebody who knows where you're going. But if you feel like you're in the back of the bus or even like in the baggage compartment, and the guy that you think is driving the bus is a terrible human being, then there's actually a greater comfort of, well, the Lord is in control, or that. So that I'm not beholden to the driver of the bus.
Which leads us to the next question about trusting in God's providence, and how does trust in God's providence reshape everyday anxieties and decisions? And there was it's been a while, but once a year I would listen to this Tim Keller sermon called Your Plans, God Plans, where he talks about, it's Proverbs, I think it's like Proverbs 13 or 16 or whatever. And he would just preach through it. And he was basically saying that if you believe you're in complete control, you will the anxiety that you will feel will debilitate you.
Correct.
And so he kind of juxtaposes this, where it's like God is in control, but then you also have responsibilities.
Yes.
So it's just very I generally listen to it at the beginning of the year to kind of just think like, hey, yes, God's in control, but I also have my own responsibilities. Kind of.
Well, and just thinking about what Jesus says about how the Lord clothes the lilies of the field. Solomon in his splendor didn't have that, and that he feeds the sparrows. He cares for the smallest creatures, and he has the water that goes down and waters the earth and gives water to the creatures. He's going to care for you. I think also, sometimes we want to compromise our moral standards, either by doing something that we shouldn't do, or even not speaking against an evil or an injustice. And the reason for that is we're thinking of the near term, like, well, what about my job? What about this, without the other thing? And I think that trusting in God's providence reminds us that your boss at work doesn't have control over your life. This situation that you're facing, that the decision makers are people who are also under God's providence and who are also going to be held accountable to the judge of the living and the dead. And so I think it kind of reshapes how we think about things, and should compel us to kind of greater freedom of action. Like this, no, I'm going to speak up. Well, but what happens if, this, that, or the other thing? Who cares? Right, all in God's good providence.
Do you have another word for heresy? Controversy? No. What would be the synonym of heresy?
I mean, heresy is error.
Okay,
theological error.
Which theological errors demanded a clear teaching on creation and providence?
Okay.
Just shifting gears here.
So if you think about Gnosticism.
What's that?
So Gnosticism would be a belief that you could have secret special knowledge. Okay. And Gnostics they despise the material world.
Because it's icky.
Icky, yeah. And so the Gnostics then have a real problem with the incarnation.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's a heresy, right? Yeah. So you're denying that Jesus was born of the Virgin Mary. And so you can't despise the world as the world because God made it good. You can despise the wickedness and evil of the world.
Right.
But I think Jonathan Edwards said this, I could be wrong. A love for creation, a delight in nature is an evidence of regeneration. Okay. That like when you are converted, you begin to delight in flowers and birds and stuff. It's like, wow, isn't God amazing? Yeah. You look at a butterfly and you think, this is just extraordinary that these butterflies are so beautiful, and I get to see them, and so I'm so framed by God so that I can perceive the beauty of this butterfly, and the only thing it does for me is bring me delight.
Yeah.
I mean that. Yeah. I don't go, wow, I'm going to eat the butterfly. I can see the butterfly and the butterfly's food. No, the only reason why I can see it is because God wants me to have delight in that. So you can't despise the material world in that way.
Okay.
Deism would be another theological error, which puts you outside of Christianity, where God makes the world and then abandons the world to itself. But we, of course, believe that God is involved and intimately involved in the world that he made. Yes, he's separate from the world, but he is involved in the world. Okay. So those would be examples of theological errors that warp how we think of God. And I think we should always be aware of the ways that these errors can tempt us away from right thinking about God. That, like, the world is terrible. Yeah. Yeah, but the world is terrible, but we need to realize that when people do wicked things, they're actually, how people say, like, to err is human, to forgive is divine. Well, actually, to err is very non-human. It's very anti-human, right? Wickedness is contrary to our nature. Yeah. How do we know this? Well, Jesus was perfectly human, without sin. So we know that true, perfect humanity is sinless. Yeah. And so when we sin, we actually do violence to our nature. So that's where, the Gnosticism could tempt us to say, like, oh, this is just what I am. I'm just, foul and dirty and whatnot. And it's like there's a moment of conversion where, and continued conviction by the Holy Spirit, where we should say, yes, I'm wicked, I'm foul. But when you talk about nature, when you talk about what God made us to be, our wickedness is a defection from what we're made to be, right? It's like a violence to what we're made to be. Then on the flip side of things with deism, I think it's, I forget who it was who said that, like, so many Christians live as practical atheists. Yeah. You're confronted with a problem and you respond just as a pagan would. Yeah. Right? Just as a pagan would. Yeah. No different. Yeah. And so we should be people of prayer and thoughtfulness and saying, okay, Lord, I'm scared about this. Yeah. And I need your help. I pray that you would give me wisdom, but also that you would just provide in these unexpected ways through your providence.
So how would you answer a deist's critique of providence?
So, it's interesting because I think it would take 2 points. The first would be, it's clearly wrong because God has acted in history and he's given a record of his action in the Holy Scriptures. So that would be the first kind of critique. The second would be, I think maybe a more philosophical one, would be the world continues to function and run. And even though everything we believe about the world is that it should just decay, right? So we, things tend towards dissolution and decay. And yet, for a long time, the world has just continued to function. We have no idea. We do, because it still kind of mystifies me. But just imagine living in the time of the Copernican revolution and like, okay, wait, the earth is itself rotating and it's moving around the sun. And these things continue. There's like a harmony of the spheres. There's this beautiful dance in the sky, and we're actually in the sky. And yet we don't fly out into orbit. Like we just, and then we keep on going. Like it doesn't kind of die down. Whereas everything else, it's like it dies down. So the deist, like, if God just made the watch and left the room, why is the watch still going? So that's a secondary kind of philosophical question. The primary one is that God acts in history in dramatic ways.
Yeah. That's interesting. So the final question, then we're going to wrap up. How do the doctrines of creation and providence provide encouragement for the believer?
So I think that just constantly reminding ourselves that everything happens to us under the government of the one who loves us and cares for us. And I think that we can look to the crucifixion of the Son of God, and we can say, wicked men did that for evil purposes, but like Genesis 50:20, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. God can use the crucifixion of the Son of God to save his people. The cross says that the things that I'm facing, real and difficult, not trying to minimize it at all. We're not Buddhists, right? These are real pains, real suffering, real wickedness. But this is an occasion for me to cast my cares on him who cares for me and who loves me so much that he did not spare his own son.
Yeah.
And he who did not spare his own son but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? So the Lord loves us. He cares for us. And we live in the world that not just he made and sustains, but he governs. There was a missionary to Persia, modern day Iran, and he was told, your sickness is you're going to die if you don't come back to England. And he said, if God has something left for me to do, I cannot die. And, if God wants me to translate the Bible into Persian, then nothing can stop me. And so we want to be wise. We don't want to be foolish. But at the same time, we can be courageous and brave.
What happened to him?
He finished translating the Bible. If I remember correctly, he finished translating the Bible and he died.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's really like
warrior.
it's like okay.
Warrior. Come on.
Yeah. Sometimes when you say those things like on Sundays and stuff and you give those stories, I'm like, okay, but what happened now?
Yeah.
Because you'll say and you're like, let's pray. It's like, and remember this person. And you're like, okay, but what about, can you finish? Maybe have a Q&A after everything. Say, just tell me what happened.
It's really funny that you'd say this. Years ago, 15 years ago, I heard a sermon and it was a woman or a man, but let's say a woman. I don't even remember the story, but like say a woman wakes up in the middle of the night and she says, I've got to pray for this missionary in Africa. And she was so burdened by it. She wrote in her journal, like I prayed for Brian or whatever in Africa. And then sometime later they met and the person who was praying said, I was praying for you. And it was weird because I was in the middle of the night. I woke up in the middle of the night and blah, blah, blah. And the missionary said, when were you praying? Well, I wrote it down because it was so striking. And then the missionary said, and again, I forget all the details, but it was like the missionary on that day was charged by a rhinoceros or a hippo or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And like got down on the ground and was just praying, oh, please, Lord, keep me safe. And was untouched by the rhino, the hippo, or the stampede of whatever.
Whatever was happening. Yeah.
And, but it was funny because I circled back years later and asked that preacher, where did you get that? He was like, I don't know. Like, I forget if he lost the book it was in, lost his notes, but he had even thought about like, where did I get that? Because I thought that'll preach. But I am very, this is a little far afield, but I'm very particular about the illustrations that I use. Yeah. That even if people claim things, I'll
fact
look.
check.
Yeah, but I'll read something from the historical record.
Okay.
Where somebody will say, like, we're preaching through Acts, and so somebody will say, like, oh, well, there was this edict from this emperor that set this price or whatever, and I'll actually look at it and see whether or not I can find the price that was set, and if I can't find it, I won't preach it. So it was really, so people say, like, how long does it take you to prepare for a sermon? And it's like, it all depends,
Yeah.
because I could
Yeah.
spend like an hour.
Yeah.
I could spend an hour working on a single, maybe two,
Wow.
working on a single sermon illustration that I then go, no, that's a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. But whether or not the person is or isn't being charged by a hippo
Yeah.
or rhinoceros
Yeah.
or whatever, we should pray for people when we're woken in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Trusting in God's providence.
Well, if you'd like to hear some of Jay's fact-checked sermons, tell people where they can find us.
They can find us at 101 Carriage Lane in Peachtree City, Georgia, and we have Sunday worship at 10:30 a.m.
All right, Jay, I'll see you on the lane.
Thanks, Brian. See you soon.